Okay, and I'm going to hit this.
And I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So, hey, cheers to everybody in the chat. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension, everything, and the drama.
How dare! Look at this. How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
It is a little calmer now. It's a little hotter. It doesn't really feel like hockey weather. We are kind of in the midst of everything is kind of winding down for the off season and all of that. Welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks, Twitch.com Shifts and Pucks, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And I did not realize this. For the first time since November? Really?
November.
Devin is joining us. How the hell are you?
Super busy. A lot has changed since I've been on last. Moved to Ontario, started a second location out here for Amped Advantage, and it's been very busy, but happy to be able to finally come back on. That's for sure.
Well, it's great to have you. Catch people up. What's going on?
So end of January, Kalen and myself packed all the pets up and moved back to where Kalen's from in just north of Peterborough. And it's been a whirlwind, that's for sure. And just trying to set down roots here and grow our brand. It's been a lot, but it's been fun.
Good. Now, those that are watching on video are going to notice that you are wearing, as a Flames and a Leafs fan, you're repping the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, I definitely am. Anybody but the Oilers.
See, that was, I think, Canada's team. I mean, I think there's some thought Canada's team with the Oilers, and I think there was a lot of Canada's team was anybody but the Oilers. I think there was a nice divide of that.
It definitely was. Out here, people were baffled that I wasn't cheering for the Oilers, and I got a lot of flack for it. So I had to get the T-shirt to support anybody but the Oilers. So obviously, it was the Panthers, and they the whole Canadian team, quote unquote, is. It's just a media propaganda that is just driven down our throats when it's a big organization like Rogers or TSN that won't be promoting that kind of storyline. I had to put in perspective to them. It's like, okay, well, who's your least favorite team? They would say, let's say Ottawa or Montreal out here. And I'm like, well, would you cheer for them? And they're like, well, maybe, I don't know. It's like, well, the diehard fans do care about who you're cheering for at the end of it. And, as far as I'm concerned, the next Alberta team to win the Stanley Cup should be the Calgary Flames, as, unbiasedly, of course.
Right. And I mean, we've all talked about it. Sean said the only Canadian team he wants to win is his. And, there's no Montreal Canadiens fan is going to cheer for the Toronto Maple Leafs if they get on a Stanley Cup run. And no Toronto Maple Leaf fan will cheer for the Montreal Canadiens if they're on a Stanley Cup run. The Ottawa Senators, I think the only two that maybe people will kind of like remove the rivalry for is Ottawa and Winnipeg.
Yep.
Like yeah, and I think both of those organizations, people will feel sort of that's the Canadian. They're our little brother. But, we'll delve into the Canucks in a bit, but our focus here will be the Flames, and there's been a lot going on. Of course, this was it ended up being, of course, a dramatic season with all of the decisions on free agents. One of them ended up to Devin's Toronto Maple Leafs, and two of them ended up on a rival to Devin's elite Maple Leafs. But let's start with the big news of the offseason. The first big domino to fall, and that was the trade of Jacob Markstrom, which was expected back in February and finally happened just before the Stanley Cup final ended. It would turn out to be Kevin Ball and a first-round pick in 2025, and to the always rumored New Jersey Devils. So this is the way that it was going to. This looked like this was how the story is going to be. What were your thoughts on that?
At first, a little underwhelmed on the return. All the rumblings of Dawson Mercer or Alexander Holtz coming back would have been ideal, obviously. But they had Kevin Ball circled, and a young, I believe he's 23 years old, not ideal, but definitely not the worst. I believe the last first-round pick for a goaltender was in the late 2000s and early 2010s, and I believe, I forget his name now. Went from Buffalo to St. Louis.
Ryan Miller.
And so you get a first-round pick and a defensive prospect that sounds like his ceiling would be a number 4 on the defensive side of things. So a third pairing, second pairing defenseman. The things that I've heard and the things that I've seen, or I watched him a bit last year, and he looks like he can be a big, solid defenseman as long as he's able to kind of have that snarl and that bite to his game. Otherwise, he can kind of get lost in the mix a little bit. But with Calgary's defensive depth, it sounds like he will definitely get a lot of time on that second pairing. And it'll be very interesting to see how he develops as a no longer really a prospect, but a defenseman that's probably going to be playing close to 20 minutes a night with, like I said, that defensive depth. And as of right now, Daily Faceoff has him with Rasmus Andersson, which I think would be a really good pairing going forward, and especially for Ball's development.
Yeah, I'm in the wait and see mode with this one because I haven't really seen Kevin Ball enough to give you good impression. The fact that they got a first round pick in 2025, I mean, it's probably looking like at this point, depending on what you're seeing, New Jersey is probably going to be in the second half of the draft. So it's, but the way that New Jersey's built right now are the expectations around New Jersey. And I mean, we all were wondering who this guy last year that was traded for Tyler Toffoli for, named Yegor Sharon, what to call it? And now he's a $5.5 million player with the Calgary Flames who ended up scoring 30 goals. Now, I'm not saying Kevin Ball is going to score 30 goals. I don't think that he's never scored more than 6, and that was with the Ottawa 67s. So he's going to be a defensive guy. He's going to be a giant, and he's a guy that you're building your future around. And it's the Flames on defense are looking pretty good when you add the draft with getting Zane Parekh in the first round, which I think might be a little bit of a steal, not a massive steal, but it might be a steal. And then, of course, with the Elias Lindholm trade, you got Hunter Brzeskevich, who at least has the ability to be an offensive defenseman, maybe a Tyson Barrie type in the league. John Klingberg type in the league. I think that that's a reasonable expectation. Am I off base there with that? Oh, I didn't realize you left. I was sitting there all chatting with you. Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So I kind of put Hunter Brzusevich early indications. Tyson Barrie, John Klingberg, an offensive guy can quarterback a power play at least.
Yeah, and you know what? I actually had a chance to see him play against the Peterborough Petes earlier this year with his last showing in Peterborough. So I saw him live, and he definitely is a bit of a rover out there, and he definitely has that offensive eye, if you will. So it's interesting because, as you said, we did get Zane Parekh in the first rounder, so I think they're going to be very similar type of players. So I think it kind of puts a bit of a as far as Buchnevich goes. Or Brzusevich, kind of puts him in a pigeonhole a little bit. But I think that if Parekh is going to be that highly touted offensive defenseman, then when it comes down to Brzusevich, then he could be a good trading piece. But as Craig Conroy said after the draft, they were just keying in on skilled players and high offense. So you can't have enough of those guys in your system. And especially with the way that Zane Parekh plays, it'll be really interesting to see how he and Brzusevich is utilized going forward and their development.
Yeah. So you're getting so you're adding that defensive type of player in Kevin Ball. So, and then you got Daniil Miramanov, who sort of plays like Parekh and Brzusevich as well. He seems to be a little bit of a roamer project that they got in the Noah Hannafin trade. So you got some guys kind of similar style on the right side, and you need some left shot defensive defensemen. So that was the big one. And I think overall that's a wait and see. The surprise move, and I guess not the surprise. I don't think I'm surprised that Andre Mangiapane was traded. I'm surprised that they got a second-round pick for Andre Mangiapane, because I was honestly thinking that this was a guy that was probably a buyout candidate, or if you were going to trade him, third-round pick or less. He's had one good year with 35 goals, and he's kind of been stagnant ever since. So I thought the Flames came out looking very good without Andre Mangiapane, and here getting a second-round pick.
Yeah, it was definitely a surprise that it was that high of a pick. And you have Washington, who really wants to get back in the mix next year and get Ovi his records. So, you got to look for those middle six players, and I can understand the desperation because obviously the Capitals were very much a downward team this year, and they're looking to get back in the mix. So good for Craig Conroy to try and find a good fit or a good trade for Mangiapane and open up that cap space.
Yeah, that was a good move. And then that, of course, you had the draft, and then we went to free agency. And, I think Craig Conroy was very clear. No long-term contracts, nothing in the 7-year term. They weren't going to go into the big fish game, and they went into the little fish game. But the first thing that they did is they did spend some money on their own player. They did, as the aforementioned Yegor Sharagonivich, 31 goals last year in 82 games. First-time 30-goal scorer, second-time 20 or more goal scorer. Joins 5 years, $5.5 million. I think this is a hell of a signing for a guy that, whether you think he's a center or a winger is a fair debate. But, he is going to be a part of the core. I think his game started to get more comfortable as the year went on. And I'm actually a big fan of what Yegor did. I'm not saying this guy's going to win any awards, but I think he has the ability to be a really solid 200-foot player.
Yeah, I think so too. And with Michael Backlund kind of being at the helm here for the Calgary Flames, you can learn a lot from him. And I wouldn't be surprised if they go back and forth between Zary and Sharagonivich in the middle, depending on what they're looking for. And obviously, he's a right-handed shot, so it would be really good for the Flames to kind of have that versatility down the middle and get the development from Zary as well. And hopefully, Sharagonivich is able to kind of continue this trajectory of being a goal scorer here in Calgary. And at 5.75, you can't go wrong for 5 years for a bit of a not a project, but gambling on him. And I think it's Craig did a great job with that signing.
Yeah, he's basically making the same salary as Jake DeBrusk with Vancouver, but this is a 5th-round pick. He's found his way at 26 years old to make himself a very serviceable player in the National Hockey League. Good on him. So, and I think the two things with that I think was great is it was nice to hear someone that wanted to stick around with the Flames, and I think people were a little worried in the offseason when he didn't say that he was going to commit, but I think that was probably broken English more than I wanted to stay. And I think there was probably a lot of other things going on there. So good signing. And then the Flames did hit the free agent bucket here. They signed. Actually, I'm going to talk about what they didn't do, because I actually think that what they didn't do was almost better than what they did. They didn't sign Jake DeBrusk to a 7-year deal, which he got in Vancouver. They didn't sign Anthony Duclair, another player that was reportedly on the Flames' radar, to a 4-year deal. And apparently there were reports that Victor Arvidsson was on the Flames' radar, and they did not sign a 31-year-old, sometimes oft injured player to a 2-year, $4 million contract. I actually think that was the best thing the Flames did.
Yeah, got to be careful with the free agency. There's a lot of Flames fans out there that remember the Troy Brouwer signing being one of the major ones. And yeah, you don't want to be committing to a older player for a long term. I don't think Calgary's there to be swinging, for someone like a Victor Arvidsson, who, as you said, has been injured, has been injury prone in the past. And, he does go to the Oilers, where they are looking for more scoring. So, obviously the good majority of free agent signings is 1 or 2 years too long, or $1 or $2 million more than you want to actually give that player, especially with how shallow this market was. And so Jake DeBrusk, as you said, goes to Vancouver. There's mixed opinion on that signing. I know that for sure. And I don't think Calgary's there just yet to be making those type of acquisitions when they are in a retool/rebuild for the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. And it's not that we'll get into it's not that I'm thinking what a massive error that these teams that sign these guys are. I just think the Flames are in a different place. There are Oiler fans that look, now everyone wants to come to Edmonton because of the McDavid factor. That might be true. There may be some truth to that, but you're also not in a situation with the Flames. You're not in the situation to bring in a Victor Arvidsson. That's not a fit where the Flames are. That's more of a fit where the Oilers or the Canucks are, right? And then I would say that Jake DeBrusk, that contract fits more where the Canucks are kind of going than where the Flames are going. So that's to me kind of I don't know how much as that is. I think that there's some partial truth to wanting to play on a team that was close to the cup contenders. I think that that's partially true, but I also think that that's basically, I think you have to look at that as fit as well too, right? So,
well, and you want to make sure that the younger players within your system are able to develop properly, and if they are popping down with the Wranglers, that they're able to have a chance to play with the Flames. So you have Coronado, you have Rory Currens, and Adam Klapka, Jacob Pelche, Cole Schwint. Those are players that you really hope that they do take that next step next year and that they do start pushing at camp for a spot. They're all in their early 20s, 21 to 23. And this is the time where they need to make their mark on whether or not they are going to be a NHLer or not. And that's going to be very apparent within the next year or two for those young prospects.
Yeah. So we'll get to the other forward that was signed. And I have a theory about this. And it was a signing of Anthony Mantha. Now it is a 1-year contract, $3.5 million. He played with a little bit with Vegas last year. He had ended up with a total of 20 goals in 56 games with the Capitals, 3 goals in 18 games with Vegas. So 23 goals last year. But I mean, part of what Craig Conroy said is they brought in Anthony Mantha to liberate or release Jonathan Huberdeau. And I just find this interesting that this is a 1-year contract. And I have a theory. I think Jonathan Huberdeau is on, if all the players, maybe of all the people in the organization, the hottest seat right now is on Jonathan Huberdeau. I think behind Craig Conroy's smile, there's a little bit of seething about how this all went down. The person that is wearing that shirt there, you're wearing that Florida Panthers shirt, dancing around with the Stanley Cup is former Flame Matthew Tkachuk. I don't think that it's sitting well how this turned out. I mean, I think Mackenzie Weegar, I think you cannot blame Mackenzie Weegar for anything on this trade. You can't even really blame Brad Treliving how this trade turned out, because I think most people thought that what Treliving did was really good. The person that is responsible for how bad this trade turned out from the Calgary side, I think is mostly the finger has to be pointed at Jonathan Huberdeau. I think the Flames are starting to lose a little bit patience for him. And I think that they brought in Anthony Mantha for 1 year. And this will be a really hard contract to trade. I will first reverse that. But I think their patience is wearing very thin on Jonathan Huberdeau if he does not get at least 75 to 80 points this year.
Absolutely. Like you said it. He has to look at himself in the mirror and know that he has to be better. And, I think we all know that he's not a $10 million player, but he needs to be playing at least close to a point per game. And if he's not, then there's going to be some rumblings on, okay, well, how do we get Jonathan Huberdeau back to where he needs to be? Or, it's almost an untradeable contract without Calgary eating a certain amount of salary. And Mantha, I think it's a great deal. Realistically, 1 year, 3.5, like for a 44-point guy. He'll have all the opportunity to play with our top players and be able to hopefully thrive. And if it's not with Jonathan Huberdeau, he could be with Nazem Kadri, and hopefully Kuzmenko can, because you have Sharagonivich, Kuzmenko, and Mantha, who they can try and figure out, okay, who's going to be popping with Huberdeau, and whether or not that's Mantha or not, who the hell knows. But I think it's a very low risk signing for Mantha, and if he does get 23 goals and maybe around 50 to, I think 60 points is a lot for him, but if he even gets up to above 50 points, then you're laughing. But if anybody's thinking that the Calgary Flames are going to try and push for a playoff spot next year, then I think you need to reset your expectations for this hockey club, because they're just not there. Like, if you look at this roster as it's made out right now, I don't think that you really you're squinting real hard to try and figure out, okay, it could be a find away Flames type of year. But overall, I think it's just a developmental stage for the Calgary Flames. And as far as the Huberdeau contract goes, I don't think it's going anywhere.
Well, I mean, there would be a discussion of a buyout, but I would imagine Murray Edwards, if Craig Conroy is going to Jonathan Huberdeau or Murray Edwards about a Jonathan Huberdeau buyout, he better bring a suitcase with him. But although it's not his fault, I don't think Marie Edwards and the Flames ownership group are going to be looking at paying about $2-3 million a year to Jonathan Huberdeau for 5 years. It's going to be very similar to what happened with Vancouver and OEL, right? It would be a pretty historic kind of buyout. So, I can't see them doing that. But I mean, this is also on Jonathan Huberdeau. The nice thing about the Mantha trade is if he pops, and the Flames can trade him at the deadline, right? And you can get something for him. So, and really what the Flames need to do this year, or what was beneficial for the Flames to do this year, and I'm not advocating for tanking, but this is an important thing to note here. The Flames owe a first-round draft pick to the Montreal Canadiens as part of the Sean Monahan trade, and it is top 10 protected. So the Montreal gets the lowest of their first-round picks. That's why the 2025 first-round pick for Markstrom makes a lot of sense. And they think there's still some confusion around Florida's first-round pick in there as well. So, but if it's in the top 10, it is protected. So basically the Flames, I'm not calling for tanking, but probably the best situation for the Flames is to try to get into the lottery here and not make the playoffs. And they're not a playoff team. I don't think anybody has that expectation on this team right now. So I'm not calling for tanking, but I think the best situation for them is to finish in the bottom 10 to avoid giving Montreal another first-round pick. And we'll get to the Canadiens in a bit here. So
yeah. Well, and the other thing is that if they are in the mix for a wild card spot, you don't think that Craig Conroy is going to go out and try and load up by any means for getting players to try and push the playoffs. If they make the playoffs, then they obviously had a really good year. But yeah, they definitely need to make sure that this is a developmental time for the Flames and retooling what they have.
Yeah. And they brought in one other forward they brought back, wore a Florida Panthers shirt around the beach where he also rose the Stanley Cup. Former Calgary Flame, Ryan Lomberg is back with the organization. I always thought he would have been a fan favorite when he was here first time. I think he's going to be a fan favorite again. Probably a little pricey, but I think it's a good signing to have Ryan Lomberg in this organization. Another guy that has a couple of guys in Calgary, I think, can bring some wisdom into that locker room.
Yeah, and he's very one of the reasons why he was not re-signed here was because he just couldn't stay out of the penalty box. So I think now he's found his. He still gets penalties, but I think he's found his niche, and it could be a really beneficial for a guy like Martin Pospisil to try and figure out where that line is and help him develop a little bit more to be that middle six type of player that has that grit and that tenacity. I love this signing. I think you and I both were a little upset that they weren't able to find a way to bring him back after his contract ended the first time. So and I believe when Conroy talked to Lomberg, he was saying that Lomberg was saying that he really has always been a Calgary Flame and he didn't want to leave.
Yeah, so that was the forward work that they did. And then on defense, one thing didn't happen, one thing did happen. We'll talk about what did happen. There was some criticism for this, which was kind of fascinating, and I think people forget. They brought in former Flames CEO John Bean's son Jake into the organization. Jake is a former hitman. John Bean, again, no longer with the organization as a CEO. He has moved on. A lot of people looked at this and saw this as nepotism, but as Fireside Chat, our friends pointed out, everyone wanted Tisha Gendla. But I think that this is a guy that has had a lot of potential that just hasn't quite figured it out.
Yeah, and yeah, it's only 2 years. Was it 1.75 per year? So you can't really go wrong with it. Why not roll the dice on a guy who was with Carolina or was drafted by Carolina and then traded to Columbus. And I feel like he really hasn't had a chance to thrive. And this will be a good spot for him to kind of solidify himself as a full-time NHLer, because he was in and out of the lineup in Carolina, in and out of the lineup in Columbus. So, as far who cares what the guy, what the ties are to the Calgary Flames with John Bean. Jake, I think he has a good upside potential. And if he doesn't, it's a very low risk, high reward kind of play by the Flames.
Yeah. This is a guy that has an opportunity to redeem his career a little bit here and get himself in a comfortable situation. So it's an interesting signing. Who they didn't sign, and who I actually thought the Toronto Maple Leafs would sign this guy when he didn't sign with the Flames, was Oliver Shillington. Now, I think that there's some fans that believe that Shillington owes the Flames something because of the time that he's taken off for his mental health. I'm not one of them. I think Shillington has every right to just decide whatever that is. And if he felt that he wanted a longer-term contract than what the Flames were giving him, that's his right. But I'm actually kind of surprised I'm sort of surprised Oliver Shillington is not signed yet. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back to the Flames. And he may be a little bit, obviously a later signing, but he may be one of those that waits closer to the season, kind of waiting around. But, where were you on Oliver Shillington?
It's kind of from the outside looking in, it is a little weird and a little asking the question, what has happened, if there is any animosity between the two sides. Conroy has come out and said as well that I think term was the only thing that was really, and probably money was a bit of a pinch point for them not being able to get it done. Now, Conroy also has said that that Shillington and their camp have not totally closed the door. It's still a little bit there, but it doesn't sound like that's going to be an option here. So I think there is also the understanding of that going into free agency. So the signing of Jake Bean, obviously they're two different players, but you have to mitigate that loss somehow within the organization. And where I think he might be a later signing, or he might be a PTO and go somewhere and get a contract during training camp, just with how tight the cap is. Even though it did go up, there are teams out there who are looking kind of for bargain deals, and Shillington is on that list because of the fact he didn't play for 18 months.
Yeah, it's hard to get a gauge on, it's hard to figure out what his comparable is because he hasn't played in a year and a half. And I kind of thought Toronto would be an interesting fit. Brad Treliving, he already has a relationship with, and he kind of got his career on the right track playing with Chris Tanev. And I thought that might be an interesting pairing here. That might be an interesting place for him. And that could be where he ends up getting a PTO as well, is a place like Toronto, even Winnipeg, who lost Brendan Dillon and Nate Schmidt to free agency. They probably are going to be looking for defense. Maybe even, Florida might be a good PTO place as well for Shillington. But I think I hope the best for him. I'm not going to sit here and criticize whatever. It's hard for me to criticize what he's done because I don't know the ins and outs of the situation, and I don't really want to say that I feel he owes anybody anything. It's his career.
It's his career. At the end of the day, he's a contractor trying to find the best spot for himself and what he values himself at. And we have seen in the past players go into a training camp as on a PTO and get picked up by somebody else. So he does have a chance, and I think that there will be teams that will be willing to kind of bank on him to have a resurgence of some sort. But you are right. His best year was with arguably the best defensive defenseman in the league with Chris Tanev. So maybe there's a fit within Toronto or somewhere else where they are looking for a 5-6, maybe even a 7th defenseman to round out their roster.
Yeah. And then the goaltender the Flames signed was Devin Cooley. He was undrafted, but played last year with San Jose. It's a 2-year contract, and he's joined the Flames as kind of that buffer in between. Of course, you have the question of Dan Vladar and his surgery. He's expected to be ready for August, but we now have a competition. Craig Conroy has not come out and ordained Dustin Wolf the number one goalie. Now, they may think that in the organization internally, but externally, they're making this a competition, which I think is the right thing to do. Just give Devin Cooley or give Dustin Wolf, Devin Cooley, and Dan Vladar the opportunity to compete for the position. I mean, I think Wolf is the odds-on favorite. I think he's proven as much as possible in the AHL, but there's still going to be some growing pains. And with goaltenders, it's never often as easy as this looks. So I do like this depth transitional signing of Devin Cooley.
For sure. It's once again, he's getting league minimum. It's a 2-way deal, so he can go up and down between the AHL and the NHL. And I think competition is the best way to go about it for young goaltenders, and whoever grabs the reins, grabs the reins. I'm with you. I think Wolf obviously has the upper hand within the organization, but he's gonna have to prove it like he has his entire career, which I think is going to be in his favor, considering he has been doubted as every single level coming up because of his size. So I think it was a great signing by Conroy again to kind of see, okay, is Vladar actually as good as he says he is, and if he's able to rebound properly from his surgery, because if not, then you really don't have anybody else in the system that would be a formidable backup for. I think we are penciling in Wolf as being the 1A of this tandem, and it's going to be up to Vladar and Cooley to battle for that second spot in my mind.
Yeah. I want to get to this question to Dylan, which will transition to a couple of other things here. Of course, the PLD trade happened. A lot of people were wondering if that was a tradable contract. Washington Capitals, who bought Cap Friendly, said, sure, let's do that. And so is the Huberdeau contract more untradeable than what Pierre-Luc Dubois is? My answer to that is yes, and it's simply because of the position that Pierre-Luc Dubois plays. It is center. And it's his size. I think there's still always going to be an appeal for that. But Huberdeau, a winger that hasn't played center as far as I know in the NHL. I think that makes it really harder to ask people to take a portion of a $10 million a year salary.
Let alone, it's what, $2 million more for Huberdeau, and Huberdeau is 31 years old in comparison to PDL at 26. So PDL has a bit more runway, less miles on him, and I think the money has a lot to do with it, but the age has even more to do with it. And the other difference is that you still have the bones of a Stanley Cup winning team out there with John Carlson, Ovechkin. So you're surrounding him with other key players that he could thrive under. But with Huberdeau, they're two completely different players. And the position does have a big aspect on it as well. PDL, he takes nights off, but he still has an impact on the game in comparison to Huberdeau, who doesn't really have any flashes. Like we're praising Huberdeau here in Calgary with how well he made a pass and doing the simple things properly. Like it's to me, it's apples and oranges in comparison. But as far as I can see the comparison with just the contract in general, but there is $2 million difference between the two of them.
Yeah. As far as the Flames offseason, I guess the other question will be around the Kadris, the Colemans of the world, the Backlunds, the Uyghurs, if they ask out. I think if any of that happens, that will be at the trade deadline. I think the Flames will be generally silent for the rest of the offseason, and maybe they may bring in a couple of PTOs, but I don't suspect anything too significant until we start the season.
Yeah, I agree. I don't even know if they're going to be trade line acquisitions. I think if they're going to try and get Kadri off the books, Coleman's a bit easier because I think he only has 2 years left on his contract, but Kadri has 4. It would be really hard for them to trade in season, let alone at the trade deadline. All depending on, you don't really see contracts like a Kadri's being traded at the deadline because he does have 4 years left and he is 33 years old. So
yeah.
You can make the argument that Coleman would be probably the best potential move for the Flames if that was going to be the case. Just because he is a playoff performer, a Stanley Cup winner, in comparison to Kadri, who is obviously a Stanley Cup winner as well. But they're two different types of players for sure.
Yeah, if I'm the Canucks, and I think that there's going to be, we'll transition to Toronto here in a second, but I'm just going to put this out there. I think we're going to be trade deadline between the Canucks, the Oilers, and probably the Golden Knights as they try to line up for the Pacific. If I'm the Vancouver Canucks, one player I am trying very hard to get out is Michael Backlund. I think he is a perfect replacement for Elias Lindholm. He is a guy that has had a tremendous amount of success against Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. And he fits I think he would fit the Swedish culture there. I think if I'm the Canucks, I target Michael Backlund very hard. That is a guy I completely focus on.
Yeah, obviously you didn't expect to have a division trade with Calgary and Vancouver for Elias Lindholm. So who knows? It could be another option or another target for the Vancouver Canucks, right? So, yeah, we're just sorry. I have a bit of construction going on here.
Michael Backlund behind you for me.
He's knocking at the door.
Yeah,
because Backlund does only have 1 year left. So if there was going to be a player that I guess no, he has 2 years left. Sorry, 2 years left at 4.5. He would be a really good fit on a cup contending team for 2 years to be a shutdown defense or center.
Yeah, perfect third line guy. Okay, let's just quickly touch on the Toronto part of this. Of course, your team, other than the fact that you ran other than the anybody but the Oilers, of course, one of these second day draft day stories was near the end of the draft. Dallas traded Chris Tanev's rights to Toronto. That led to a 6-year contract, which was similar to the idea that was presented to Steven Stamkos, kind of more term and kind of spread that out a little bit. Of course, the head scratching part of this is he's 34 years old for some people. I actually don't hate this as much as everybody else is. I think it's, to me, I don't think people realize I think Chris Tanev is still criminally underrated. People could assume, what I keep hearing about people with Chris Tanev is this guy's going to get hurt, this guy's going to get hurt, this guy's going to get hurt and not be able to play. He's played with one arm. He's literally taken pucks to the face and put the tooth back in his mouth and went back on the ice. He's played with one leg. This guy, is he going to play at a 22-minute level? No. But is he going to be a guy that still is one of the best defensive defensemen in the league? Look what he did. Look what he did in the 3 rounds. I mean, I still think, at least for a couple of years, you're still getting a really good Chris Tanev. And that's a contract you end up hiding at some point anyway.
That's exactly it. 6 years is a long time for a 34-year-old. The way that he plays, I heard rumblings that no one wanted to give him more than 3 years. He was looking for 4 years, and one thing that hasn't been talked about is his leadership within the room as well. The Vancouver fans know that he was called nicknamed Dad in the locker room before he signed with the Calgary Flames. So I think that leadership goes a long way. But I'm with you. If they get 3, maybe even 4 years out of him before he retires or is unable to play, that's probably what's going to happen. Then, yeah, I mean, the MLS is going to definitely just bury the contract. It's not like the money really matters, and it won't be. This is their window within the next 3 to 4 years, essentially, and especially with only having 4 more years left on Austin Matthews' contract, you want to make sure that you're given the best potential opportunity to win. And Tree Living knows Tanev, and I think, yeah, as I said at the beginning, just his leadership is not talked about enough.
Yeah, and you said really, yeah. I mean, I think the myth. I think that the myth that this guy's an often injured player needs to be dispelled because he's played through injuries. With Calgary, he played 75 games last year, 65 games the year before. That's actually not bad. That's not that's injury, but it's not Mark Stone. And I'm not being disrespectful to Mark Stone. So you could do worse. And then you get OEL, who it's a redemption kind of. He redeemed himself in Florida and is fit in Toronto.
Yeah, I think the whole premise about bringing him in, Cup winner, and he can replace Morgan Riley on that back end, so Riley doesn't have to really worry about playing that first line power play. They tried to bring in John Klingberg last year. Obviously, that didn't work out. He got injured and wasn't able to play at the NHL level again. And it just, they're looking for that QB on that power play to have that dynamic puck moving defenseman as well, and be able to hopefully figure out what's going on in the playoffs for the power play, because that was one of their detriments this year and in years past. So once again, free agency is, man, you got to be careful with the term. It's probably a year or two too long for him. But once again, Tree Living did this in Calgary as well. He's banking on the timeline and that he has with these players, and you have to make a swing for it. And once again, there's not much else out there. I know that Matt Roy was on their radar as well, but I forget where he went, but he went elsewhere. Oh, Washington, yeah. So OEL, yeah, he'll just be a quarterback on that power play and be a serviceable second pairing, if not hopefully third pairing, and hopefully Liljegren is able to step up, because they signed him as well. Yeah.
So focus on the defense. And then goaltending wise, they did one thing I liked. I think getting in Anthony Stolarz at $2 million is actually not bad. I probably was the best backup in the league. I half wondered if they were going to put Stolarz in for Game 7 for Florida. I half wondered that, but I'm like, I think they're going to run with Bobrovsky. I get harebrained things in my brain, and then But the other thing, I think I'm a little worried about that Joseph Woll contract. It feels a little much for me for a guy that has more injuries than proven, but I think most teams are needing to go to some sort of tandem anyway. I think it's really hard to win with a 60 game goaltender. And I think I think that's why you bring in a Stolarz to kind of insulate Woll a little bit. And I know that the organization has been really high on him. It's the question is the health of Joseph Woll. So
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's just the health of him. When he is healthy, he's been amazing. He's been really, really good for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yeah, the 3-year, just a hair over 3. It's $3.66 million per year. I don't know. It's a gamble for sure. But what else is out there as of right now for a good 1A type of goaltender? So you do have to roll the dice on him. You got to hope that he's able to stay healthy and not trip on his laces and break his ankle. I know he didn't do that, but it just feels like that's kind of his mantra. Just with the injuries seem very minor as far as the incidents go and how they happen. So yeah, they'll roll out with Woll and Stolarz, and I'm happy with the Stolarz signing. I think that was a very smart move by True Living to bring in a cup winner again, and I think he'll be a formidable 1B for the Leafs.
Yeah. Just a breaking news here: Robbie Fabry has been acquired by the Detroit Red Wings for a 2025 4th-round pick and goaltender Gage Alexander.
Welcome back, Fabry. Because he got traded from Detroit to St. Louis.
Right. No, the Ducks acquired him, though.
You said Ducks. Oh.
Yeah, so the Red Wings traded Fabry to the Ducks for a 4th-round pick and Gage Alexander.
Oh, wow. Well, there you go, Dylan. You got to be happy about that.
Yeah, there you go. Plan the parade in Anaheim. I guess the elephant in the room with Toronto is Mitch Marner. Does he stay? Does he go?
It sounds like as of right now, everything's kind of really quiet. I don't know. I think they should try and trade him. It's just, you always the mantra that, the team who gets the best player in the trade usually wins that trade. It's very hard to trade that contract, but there are teams out there that would want him, and Utah might be one of them. And as long as you get back an NHLer plus a pick, then I think you're laughing at that point. But the unfortunate thing is that the whole entire league knows that he's going to be traded, so they're not going to be throwing any lifelines or to Brad True Living at all. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this kind of all plays out. I think they should have the same idea that if they are going to trade him, and I know he has a no trade clause within his contract, but similar to the Draisaitl situation up in Edmonton, if they don't have any traction within the before the season, then it's like, okay, well, he's an asset. He needs to be moved at some point. And whether or not they retain salary, which is a possibility in order for them to get back more within the trade. I would, if I was going to put a percentage on it, I would say that he's probably 60% going and 40% staying.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing is, of course, the reputation of his playoff performance, at the very least with Marner, is part of the problem. But I think Tree Living, I wonder about if he has, flashbacks of what happened with Johnny Gaudreau going through his mind here at some point. And I think you can't. I mean, I think Johnny, for the most part, wanted to stay in Calgary. I mean, he just made a last-minute decision differently. I think Marner, if Marner had his druthers, it sounds like most of his decision would be stay in Toronto. So I don't think he needs to rush to a trade, but I also don't think, like, if he loses Marner for nothing, I think that I don't think Leaf fans are going to take too kindly to it either.
No, you have to get something for him or re-sign him. You do have to get to the playoffs, and he's such a great performer in the regular season. It's just, do you gamble by re-signing him to figure it out in the playoffs? Because he's going to get more than he's getting right now. I think he's getting 10.5 from my recollection. But you do have to definitely get something for Marner, and you can't let him walk. There's no way. Because, his PTSD for Brad Treliving with the Johnny Gaudreau. Yeah, he's making a shade under 11, 10.9 million. So, you definitely have to figure something out within the next few months, or have a certain direction to go in.
Yeah. Let's talk about Vancouver, and then we'll kind of get into an overall thing here. So the Canucks were also busy in free agency. We'll talk Canucks at a more in-depth when we get Sean, Tyler, Chris around. But, of course, the big signing was Jake DeBrusk, 7 years, 5.5, similar salary to Yegor. And, of course, you got Danton Heinen, former Bruin, Kiefer Sherwood, former Predator, and Derek Forbort, former Bruin as well, and Vincent Desharnais and Yuri Patera, goaltender, kind of to do similar to what Devin Cooley's doing with the Flames, kind of be that in-betweener. I liked the Heinen, Sherwood, Forbort signings. I think those were astute signings. I don't hate the DeBrusk signing. My issue is I feel that's just a little too long.
Yeah, it definitely is a little long. I think that's par for the course for majority of free agent signings. He's a good middle six player. He just hasn't popped the way that Boston and thought he was going to be. And there was the issue with the coach in Boston, and they got another coach, and things didn't change. And he might have done a bit better from my recollection, but it is a little rich on the term for sure. But I'm with you. Those other signings are good, but who knows? He might change of scenery. He's always been with Bruin. Change of scenery and coming to Western Canada, where he is from, might be everything that he's looking for, and being close to his family. So it remains to be seen. Where do you think he slots within the lineup?
Well, I think the plan was to get the key was you get a winger for Petey. So I think that's going to be the initial thought. But doesn't he feel like a JT Miller guy? Don't you put him with DeBrusk? DeBrusk, Miller, and Bester, doesn't that feel like a line to you?
I think that they'll try and figure out what the best solution will be for him. Whether or not you are looking for kind of a puck retriever for Pettersson. He would be kind of in the same ilk of, or the same idea as a Zach Hyman type of player, go in front of the net and retrieve pucks in the corner and get him to the skilled players. But if you want to load up that Miller-Besser line with DeBrusk, then he might be a really good option there for the Vancouver Canucks. I just don't. He just doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. What is Jake DeBrusk? Like, what type of player is he, realistically?
I think he's a higher level Höglander. I think he's like, not that Höglander's bad. That's not what I'm saying. I think he's just a more mature Höglander, where you can get pucks out of the corner. He's good net front presence, solid defensively, solid offensively. Like, I guess where I sit in my concern is does he scare you? Because I think one of the reasons the Kings never beat the Oilers the last 3 years is they're a good team, but they've never had that offensive guy that scared you. And the Oilers, of course, have two guys that scare you.
Yeah, and I guess – no, go for it, sir.
that's kind of where I'm at with DeBrusk. So I mean, I think he's I think he's going to be a target guy. I think he can get 25 to 30 goals. Do I think as of today, if there was a special 7-game for the Pacific Division title rematch between the Canucks and Oilers, that the Canucks would win? It would probably depend on Demko's health, but I would put the Oilers slightly ahead right now.
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, he just lacks a bit of identity and knowing what he is pretty good overall everywhere on the ice, maybe more so offensively than defensively, but yeah, he's a good complementary piece, and you can put him up and down the lineup. If he's a third liner, then he's a third liner, but at 7 years at 5.25 or 5.5, it does seem a bit questionable on where he does fit within this lineup. I have no doubt that he is a target guy for sure, and I think that if there is going to be a coach out there that can get the most out of him, Taka would be top 3. I just miss his identity of what he is as a hockey player.
The one guy I would not like, I think that Danton Heinen, I think he's a guy, seems like a guy, 15 goal scorer. I'm really interested in this Kiefer. I think the Kiefer Sherwood signing is probably the best signing out of all of them. I think this is a guy, if you put him in the right spot, might get you 20 goals. He got 20 goals with the AHL. He's a pain in the ass. Quinn Hughes wanted him on the team. Might be a guy that you put up and down in the lineup. That might be the breakout guy to watch out for. If you're doing fantasy, a late pick, maybe you're kind of take a gamble on Kiefer Sherwood, because that might be a guy you end up playing with Pettersson at some point.
If there's an opportunity, I don't think you can go wrong with testing the lines out at all. Because he is a pest. I thought he was a bit younger, but he's 29 years old, and I agree with you. I love Sherwood as a player. I don't see him getting 20 quite. Depending on who he's playing with and where he is in the lineup, he might get a few more points than he did last year. But I see him more as if he gets 10 to 15, I think you're happy with that. But I do agree that I think that's my favorite signing for Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, I think it's good. Again, I was saying this in our chat. I think, and probably you have to include Vegas in this, I think we're in for a little bit of I'm going to use the air quote, arms race of the trade deadline between Vegas, Vancouver, and Edmonton. Because, I think those are the 3 best teams in the Pacific. I think it'll come down to that. Vegas always finds a way, except they didn't this time. Maybe they missed this time, but they always find a way to get the big fish. So you can't count them out of anything. But I think the Oilers still, I'm not sold on that blue line. They have it's a God-honest miracle they got to the Stanley Cup final with that blue line. Seriously, a God-honest miracle. But so they are going to need to improve that immensely. And the Canucks, I think they're still going to need to add a forward, I think, and probably another defenseman. And Vegas, they lost a lot. They did lose a lot. I think Jonathan Marchessault is going to be a massive hit to that organization and to that identity. But they've got guys. An interesting pickup is they ended up with Alexander Holtz. So it's going to be interesting to see what that turns out. I'm not as big on Holtz as some other people, but he might fit out. And now one guy I will say that I think might be a breakout player as well in Vegas is Pavel Fiev, who he might be a guy that can replace a Jonathan Marchessault. So, of course, we've always talked that Vegas has always been all in and getting the big fish. They still have some guys in that organization and those prospects that could be sneaky as well. I still have them third. I still think it's the Oilers and the Canucks right now. But, Vegas is there.
Oh, Vegas is definitely there. I think Hurdle just came off an injury when he came back. He was formidable, but he wasn't a game changer. So I think when you look at Vegas, I think Hurdle is a key part of that. So you have the depth there. You have the grit. You have and you have Hannafin as well, right? And I mean, if you look up and down that lineup, they're solid all the way through. The question will be whether or not Aiden Hill will be able to be a formidable goaltender for the Vegas Golden Knights. But yeah, even if you look at LA, getting Chandler Jeannot, they got heavier again. And I think that was a great pickup. You have Quentin Byfield that's going to take a step forward.
I'm a Quentin Byfield fan.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. So I think those are the front runners for sure. Oilers, Canucks, and Golden Knights. But I think LA might be sneaky good next year. You do have a Drew Doughty who's 1 year older, along with Anze Kopitar. But with that leadership, I think you got to watch out for them as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Kraken make a push as well, especially with signing Montour.
Yeah, they were overpays, but I mean they can be. Those are probably the five that have a shot of doing something in the Pacific Division. I would put Anaheim, Calgary, San Jose kind of in the outskirts, and then Seattle, Calgary, Kings, Vancouver, Edmonton, probably the teams that have a chance to at least get to compete for the playoffs. And I would say Vancouver, Edmonton, Vegas, probably a chance to, if things go right. I mean, yeah, Vegas always finds the big fish, so you have to keep an eye on them. But yeah, I would put Vegas a little bit behind Vancouver and Edmonton at this point, but
yeah, no, that's completely fair. It's just if Eichel can stay healthy, and health is going to be a big factor with the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah. Let's quickly go around the league. So let's start with Nashville. They certainly made the biggest splash. Did they air quote win free agency?
I think so. I mean, it's hard to say no within the fact that they did get Marchessault, Stamkos, and Brady Shea as well. So their back end is really solid with Yossi Shea, Jeremy Lauzon, and Alexander Carrier. And I don't think people really know how good Carrier was at the beginning of last year. And he's a younger player. He's a good two-way player, and he was quarterback in that first power play unit at the beginning of last year when Yossi was kind of in and out of the lineup. So I think they are, that power play is going to be ridiculous with Forsberg, Marchessault, O'Reilly, Stamkos, and Yossi at that on that first unit. But yeah, I would say that they're up there, but I think a sneaky team is the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah, I think they did really well with Markstrom, Dillon, Pesce, and you're getting Dougie. Let's not forget Dougie Hamilton was missed most of the season. You're getting him back. I had him in the Norris conversation 2 years ago, so that is a pretty solid. And you got Luke Hughes and Simon Nemec. You got two really young stud defensemen. They may have the best blue line in the league if things go all right. And then you got Markstrom, who led in high danger save percentage this year. So yeah, you've got a really good team, and you have a really solid 1-2 center punch in Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier without question. So I think New Jersey's a team to watch out for sure. And they got bought in Paul Cotter. They got a lot of the Matt Rempe effect on New Jersey is they got a lot more. You're not going to be able to push them around anymore. So.
No, definitely not. McDermott, he's a veteran, and bring in Cotter as well. A little bit more oomph back there for just against the heavy arms race, if you will, for the Metropolitan. Yeah.
And I guess the other two I thought did really well kind of in the whole Utah getting Mikhail Sergachev, I think was a great ad. I believe someone here said that Sergachev was better than Victor Hedman.
Yep.
I'm just saying, you said it.
I definitely did. I think he has. Don't get me wrong. Hebben is a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I think Sergachev is right there with him, and he'll have the ability to show that off and not being in Hedman's shadow anymore with the Utah Hockey Club.
Yeah. And I did have the Oilers originally in my head as winners, and I still think I do. I think they're okay. I think solid up front. Again, though, that blue line I still have questions about that blue line. But I think forward-wise, I think they did pretty well. So I have them as a winner. So those were the four. I'm going to surprise you with one of my losers of free agency, because I think a lot of people are a lot higher on this team than I am. I think the Washington Capitals are one of the losers of the trade deadline. I think they overpaid for Matt Roy. I think they're going to be in for a big surprise with Jacob Chikrin. Do you know who led the Ottawa Senators defensemen in minor penalties last year, Devin?
Was it Jacob Chikrin?
It was Jacob Chikrin. His offensive game is, I think that's what gets him the appeal, but his defensive game is not, I don't think, is where a lot of people seems to be. And I don't know what's quite, I'm no Friedman Saravalli, but it just feels weird that there's some organizations that kind of soured on him a little bit in Arizona and Ottawa. I'm just curious. That's all I'm saying.
No, I think that curiosity is valid within, like he obviously is offensively gifted. His defensive game is solid. Not great, but solid enough where you can have him on your either top unit or your secondary, your second pairing. But you'd be curious on why he was so highly touted coming out of Arizona, and why I know that they did have to move a contract, and the rumors were either Shabbat or Chikrin. I think they made the right move by keeping Shabbat. I'm a big Shabbat guy, and as far as Washington goes, it does seem like they have put, well, especially the PDL trade. Who knows if he's actually going to take a step forward, or if he's just going to be the same old Dubois before, where you don't see him for nights on end, and all of a sudden when he pops, right? It just seems like he gets bored out there. And you do bring in Mangiapane. Sounds like he is going to get some power play time, and they definitely overpaid on Matt Roy for sure, and let alone bringing in Logan Thompson as well. I actually like that one for Washington. I think that was probably one of their better moves of the offseason so far, was bringing him in.
Well, Charlie, I think they're solid in goal with Charlie Lindgren. He got
sure.
So I mean, he's solid. So, and the other loser I had was the Winnipeg Jets. I just think they lost. Oof. I mean, they lost a lot, and they haven't been able to recoup yet. I mean, maybe they're going to find something at the bargain bin, but
they definitely lost, especially with Brendan Dillon. They brought in Colin Miller. He's no Brendan Dillon by any means. So they definitely lost. And my other one was the New York Rangers. I think they're a lot further away than people expect them to be. And as of right now, the Jacob Chikrin saga has started there, and who knows where he's going to go, if he's going to get traded. There was rumors that he's going to go to Detroit, but I think he nixed that trade. And once I don't think he can really. That's another hard one to trade, because he is $8 million. He does have a tendency to be injured. He is a solid defenseman.
I would love Jacob Trudeau on my team. I absolutely would.
Yeah.
The contract, and I mean, he negotiated this no movement clause, so it's within his rights. And his wife is a doctor and is doing a residency in New York, so I kind of understand. I think he doesn't want to leave his family, and I do respect that. You have to respect that.
Yeah, you do. But as far as the business goes, I don't know what Chris Drury is doing. They need to get better defensively. That's just the end all and be all of it. Keandre Miller, I like him. He's a good player. And then obviously Adam Fox, a great offensive skill, but can be questionable at times in your defensive zone. You just can't be given Shesterkin that many like 5 bell opportunities and expect him to be 100% once you hit the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, they've got probably the most underrated problem. I think that the problem that you have to keep an eye on him is Shesterkin is asking for $15 million a season.
Ooh.
The reported ask, because it's 10% of the cap, and that's what he wants.
It makes sense. He is that team pretty much.
He's the best goalie in the world.
Yep. I would agree.
Yeah, so I think there's still a lot to go through with the offs. I think there's still some little stories and stuff to figure out, but I think the big stuff has been done. I mean, I still think the other thing to keep an eye on is the Martin Necas saga in Carolina, whether he stays and goes. There are reports that he's nixed a few places, including Columbus and Buffalo. And then, so we'll see what happens. That guy, if that guy gets moved, that's going to be interesting. And then, there's a lot to talk about for the offseason in the NHL, even though it's a short offseason. Yeah,
there definitely is. As far as trade targets, Tarasenko went to Detroit today. So there's not really. Yeah, he got 2 years at 4.75. So a little move by Stevie Y out there. But there's no one really left in free agency other than that's pretty much it as far as I'm concerned. Everybody else, they'll probably get signed closer to training camp, and then I think there's gonna be a lot of PTOs, and this is where the GMs have the ability to pinch the UFAs and say, okay, well, where are you gonna go? You want this, but there's no way we're giving you that, and so are you going to go for a PTO somewhere, or are you going to take my deal? So it's definitely now in the GM's hands.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. Anything else we need to talk about?
I guess the Ottawa situation with Shane Pinto and how big of an impact he's going to have next year is definitely on my mind as well. Once he got his feet under him after his suspension, I think he was a really solid player for them.
He's a solid player. I don't think there's any question in my mind about that.
No, it's just they do have a lot of cap tied up within their top six with Tkachuk and I'm just going to bring them up here. Let's see. Stützle, Tkachuk, and then you have Shabbat and Sanderson. All of them are over $8 million or right around there, which is actually a really good kind of cap strategy from Stayhouse. But I don't know. I think they're going to have to make some decisions here on who is going to be down the middle. Is it going to be Drake Batherson, or is where's Pinto going to be kind of slotting in here? Because Batherson had a bit of a off year last year. So I just thought I would bring Shane Pinto to the table a bit.
Yeah, and then you got Josh Norris, who's often injured as well. So that's another guy. And I mean, Brady Tkachuk. Do you realize Brady Tkachuk has yet to play a playoff game?
6 years.
Yeah,
6 years. That blows my mind.
That Brady Tkachuk has been in more playoff games in the stands than he has been on the ice.
Yeah, and you got to expect that he will want to, because you want to see Brady Tkachuk in the playoffs. He's a playoff performer. He's a perfect fit to be in the playoffs. So if if Ottawa goes another year without a playoff berth, you got to expect that Brady might be questioning, okay, my brother has a cup. I've never made it to the playoffs. What am I doing here in Ottawa?
Yeah.
Because he did for his contract, he did hold out for a bit at the beginning of the year too. So you got to remember that he does have that swagger about him. He is a Kachuk at the end of the day.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you something, Devin.
Is he going to Florida?
No. Here's my hot take. Watch out for the Montreal Canadiens.
Ooh.
Was listening to a couple of podcasts about the Canadiens as a plane comes over my house. Ivan Deminoff, they are saying that Ivan Deminoff is the most skilled player they have drafted since Guy Lafleur.
Holy shit.
So, I mean, they did make that big signing of Uri Slafkovsky for 8 years. Just watch out for the Canadiens. There in a couple of years, they are going to, and that Michael Hage apparently is. I haven't seen him, but apparently the scouts are raving about that pick too. So I think Ottawa better figure this out, or the Canadiens are going to walk right past them into the playoffs.
Yep, I think you're right on par with that. If you look at their top six right now with Suzuki, or the top line, Slafkovsky, Suzuki, Caulfield, that's going to be a line to be reckoned with for the next decade. You do have Kirby Dach coming in for his second year with the club. Alex Newhook was a great trade last year, and I get used to the name of. I think Caden Cooley is going to be the next. Maybe Chris. Offensive game is really good. He can skate really well, and he does have that offensive flair as well.
Yeah. Love it. Well, let's leave it there. So I always ask how to follow you on Twitter, but you don't post anything there. So
no, not really. I just kind of scroll. I don't really do much. Hopefully within the next little bit, I'll be able to be a bit more attentive to the Twitter sphere, or X, if you will. But if you do want to follow me, every once in a while I do post cute puppy and cat pictures. So you can follow me at Gordhouse09.
Yeah. You can follow Sean at BeardyCanuck03, Tyler TNOBLE, Chris Schneids, SCHNEIDZ. I am KEVOLE on all the social medias, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. Subscribe wherever you get your audio. And as well, follow me on Threads as well. I seem to be getting some traction on Threads. Anyway, well, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.